In July 1865, two men squared off in a Missouri town square, 75 yards apart, over a gold watch and a bruised ego. One shot fired true, the other missed entirely. This single public duel between Wild Bill Hickok and Davis Tutt didn't just end a life. It created the template for every silver screen quick draw you've ever seen. But what Old West gunfights really looked like isn't what Hollywood wants you to believe. The reality? That famous shootout was almost a historical accident, the rare exception that spawned an entire myth. The truth hiding behind the legend reveals how the real Old West was far messier, deadlier, and nothing like the movies. And what we found may change the way you see every gunslinger showdown ever filmed. Springfield's town square stood silent on July 21, 1865. James Wild Bill Hickok stepped from the shadow of the southwest corner, Colt Navy revolver loose at his side, eyes locked on Davis Tutt. Tutt circled into the open, Hickok's gold watch glinting from his waistcoat, a public taunt that drew a line neither man would cross without violence. Townsfolk scattered, leaving dust swirling between the two gamblers. Hickok called out, warning Tutt not to come any further with the watch. Tutt ignored him, striding forward, hand hovering near his pistol. They faced each other sideways, tension thick enough to choke the air. At nearly 75 yards apart, far more distance than Hollywood ever shows, both men drew and fired almost at the same moment. Tutt's bullet went wide. Hickok's shot caught Tutt through the ribs. Tutt staggered, turned, and collapsed near the courthouse steps. He died within minutes. The sheriff arrested Hickok the next day under the name William Haycock. 22 witnesses gave statements, but only 4 saw the moment of truth. The jury heard about debts, insults, and the unwritten code of a fair fight. In the end, they acquitted Hickok, deciding that in this town, on that day, honor had its own law. 2 years after the Springfield duel, a writer named George Ward Nichols published a long profile of Wild Bill Hickok in Harper's Magazine. Nichols described Hickok as a legendary gunman, claiming he had killed dozens, maybe even hundreds of men, and painted the Springfield shootout as a ritualized duel over honor and romance. The article left out the debts, the messy trial, and the uncertainty in witness accounts. Instead, it gave readers a clear hero and a clean story. This version of Hickok, faster, deadlier, and nobler than any living person, spread fast. Dime novel publishers seized on the template. They filled newsstands with stories of lone gunfighters facing down villains at high noon, always in the middle of a dusty street, always for honor. By the 1880s, these paperbacks were selling by the millions, shaping how Americans pictured the West. Early filmmakers picked up the same formula. Silent westerns like Bronco Billy and the first Wild Bill movies staged dramatic Main Street duels, copying the Harper's version almost shot for shot. A single rare gunfight became the blueprint for a century of Western storytelling, replacing the real chaos of the frontier with a myth the world still believes. The numbers behind Old West violence look dramatic, but they don't tell the whole story. Historian Robert Dykstra spent years digging through coroner's logs and census records from cattle towns like Dodge City and Ellsworth. He found that a single killing in a small population could send the homicide rate soaring, sometimes over 1,000 per 100,000 people. That's a number higher than any modern U.S. city, but it's built on just 1 or 2 deaths in a year. The next year, the rate might drop to 0. Small towns meant small denominators, and every violent episode looked bigger on paper than it felt in daily life. Even in places with a reputation for bloodshed, violence came in sudden bursts, not a steady drumbeat. Dykstra's research shows that the legend of endless gunfights is a statistical illusion. not a reality that most frontier residents faced. Langford farmer Peel never waited for a fair fight. In Helena, Montana, the saloon doors swung both ways, sometimes for cards, sometimes for blood. Peel was known for settling debts with a pistol or a Bowie knife, whichever was closer at hand. The night he met John Bull, there was no walk-down, no warning. Peel's right arm was locked by a woman he was escorting outside. Bull burst from the saloon behind them, revolver drawn, and fired 3 times past the woman's shoulder. Peel tried to reach for his own gun, but the woman's grip trapped his shooting arm. Bull's bullet found its mark. Peel collapsed in the street, dying before he could even return fire. Old West revolvers weren't built for accuracy or speed. At close range, nerves and dirty tricks mattered more than quick hands. Most gunfights ended like Peel's, not with honor, but with chaos and luck. In July 1865, the Hickok Tut shootout in Springfield, Missouri, became a template for the Hollywood quick-draw duel. Yet records show it was one of the very few true standoff gunfights in the Old West. Most violent encounters were sudden, close-quarters brawls fueled by gambling, alcohol, and personal grudges, not formal duels on empty streets. Homicide rates in cattle towns, cited as high as 129 per 100,000 in some years, are now known to be skewed by small sample sizes and dramatic incidents. Historians continue to debate exactly how many shootouts occurred and how many accounts were exaggerated by press and popular fiction. What remains clear is that media, from 1860s magazines to modern films, amplified a rare event into a defining myth. Today, crime statistics and media coverage still shape our perceptions, sometimes distorting reality. The real Old West was far messier than legend, and the facts, preserved in court records and local archives, show just how rare the iconic duel truly was.